In this video, I'll show you an automation tool that I built using make.com for a property agent who needed to automate some of his emails. So after watching this video, you will see what the process is that I built, but also I will specifically raise the things that I learned in the process of creating an email autoresponder system and what you can learn out of that. So to give you a background, what we have is a property website where people go to find rentals, and when they find a rental that they like this for example, they would click on the send message button, contact agent. So you'd put in your information here and you'd say I'm interested in this property, and you click send message, and then what then happens is the property agent receives a automatically generated email from Property 24 looking something like this, where they say, okay, somebody has inquired about this property that belongs to you and they want to rent it. So here is all of their information. Please reach out to them. So what usually happens is the property agent would receive an email like this, and then within the next 10 to 15 minutes, he needs to either send an email or a WhatsApp message to the prospective renter so that you can capture that lead. But the problem is twofold really. One is when you are busy with other things, meetings or whatever other things you're busy with a day, and you don't always monitor your email inbox, you might miss those leads, and you might miss them. But the other thing is also, a lot of people actually look for properties at night after hours. And so either you have to be available on your phone after hours, or you will miss that again and only respond the following morning. And by that time, the person making the request might have looked at other rental properties in the meanwhile and found something else. So we wanted to make that turnaround time as short as possible. And using Make, we built a very basic automation tool that helps him in that process. So I'm going to just demo what it is, how it works now. So an email would come in like this, and then the automation tool, it looks like this. I'll explain this diagram in a moment, but would process. So let me just select the email for this demo purposes. If we select that one, for example, and we run, there you can see it executing. So it executes when it collects that email from Property 24. It then does a range of things to extract the important information that we want, and then an email is sent to the person who made the request. So you will see that the initial email was sent by a no reply mailbox, and so we don't want the email to be sent to the reply to the same email that was sent. It needs to be sent to a new email address, which is provided in this grayed out space here at the bottom. So the important thing was that we read the email, and let me take you through each of these modules. The first one was select watch emails, the watch emails module. Now, this is the first time for a client that I did not use Gmail. Actually, I used their email address, which is on a separate SMTP server. So that required some setup, and something to know for your clients is confidentiality and privacy policies. It is good to, from the start, to have a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA set up that you can share with a client to say that you will need the email and password so that you can access the mailbox, but you won't use it for anything other than specifically for the use case, for the automation use case that you are building this tool with. It will just set your client's mind at ease and will cover you in case of any breaches, you and the client. So this is the watch email tool that we set up. So in here we selected the client's email at the top. This is now mine that I just use for demo purposes. And then you select the folder where to collect the emails, and the criteria is all emails. And so the phrase, I have it here as phrase now to filter it in the demo, but for the client, I put this under sender email address, no reply at property24.com. So when an email is received by that email address, then process it. But for our use case, I just put it as phrase, which means it'll look into my whole email, my entire inbox, and see if no reply somewhere comes up somewhere, and only filter those emails. That was why those two emails were selected when I set the this choose where to start, and I say select the first email. Those two emails come on because those are the two demo emails that I have for this use case. So let me just show you again. There they are. Okay. Next, when I run this module, you'll see that there are text content and HTML content, both in this email that we have. So I'm not going to show everything in here, but basically we extract the information from here to process it further. Okay, so the first thing I did is I passed the HTML content and to make it text, to make it a bit easier to read. And then from there, I extract the price. So I used a tool, regex 101, to help me. Between regex 101 and ChatGPT, I managed to create the regex for this to extract the price of that rental. And then I set that as a variable. The reason I set it as a variable here is that then I can pass the number, so it extracts the text string, but then this changes the string to a number value, and then I put a filter on to basically only process emails that are more than 0. So meaning if there are any other mails coming in that doesn't have a rental price in it, then it's excluded. And also if the price is more than a certain amount, then that's also excluded, because there is a chance that that might be a sale rather than a rental, and this process is only made for rentals. Then something which I was quite proud of was actually extracting the Property24 link. So something we added was when you receive the email, let me show you here, this banner is actually quite useful as a reference. And so, and this is HTML content. So I extracted this to use this in the follow-up email as well. So that is what this does. It basically uses a regex again to find a specific phrase, which is recurring in the Property24 emails, and then it extracts the HTML content, that banner, from there. Then I have a ChatGPT module which extracts the property address. So it looks in the main mail and finds the address. The reason I used the ChatGPT for this and not a regex like these other ones, I had it here. Here we go. I actually removed it completely. But I had it as a regex before, was that sometimes the address of the property, like in this case, is entered as one bed flat and not as the property name itself. So it's a longer text that is not required. We only want the address. Then I have inquired by, which works the same way as the other regex, where it looks for the person's name. And then I have extract client name here. So basically what this does is it looks at the inquiry by on the left, this regex, where it extracted the name and surname of the person, and it only takes out the name, so that when we write an email to the client, it will actually only use the name and not the name and surname, because it just feels a bit more personal if you address someone on the name rather than name and surname exactly as they typed it in on the website. It creates a bit more of an informality to it. So this is how I did that. I'm not going through all the details of this prompt. Then I extract the email address as well, which is also available in that document or in that email. And then I set variables. So these are multiple variables that's been set which just makes it a bit easier for processing. Going forward, you'll see there are a couple of blank emails, variables here that I'm not using. So I have used them in some of the initial versions. I took them out because they ended up being redundant. And then I have an email. So this email, once again, it's set up now on my own demo system. It uses HTML content. So most of the videos that I saw, people use simple text, plain text formatting. And I'll talk now about the problems that I ran in with that. And so I ended up creating HTML content, which has a fairly strict format, but I add things like the client name in there, and at the bottom, the number of, which I also saved as a variable, the number of the agent. And here, way at the bottom, I have that Property 24 banner is actually put in there in HTML. So I can't really write HTML on my own. Once again, I used ChatGPT to help me to translate the standard email that I want to write and just transpose that in an HTML format. So after this whole process ran, then the client, the person who made the original prompt, would get an email like this. Inquiry for, and there we go. And this is what the email would look like. And here it says, Dear Client. The reason for that is when somebody, I told ChatGPT inside that when you need to analyze the name and surname of the person, but if you can't locate a name, then just use the name client. That's fine, rather than keeping it blank or making up something else, which we don't want. So I just forced it to say client. That's why it says it like this. Thank you for your interest in the property below. Here I added a link to reply on WhatsApp, which is quite useful for property agents who on their phones most of the time. Or you can reply to this via email, and here are the questions that the agent asked. Please note, kind regards, property agent. And here is that banner, exactly the same as the initial one. This one is there as well. And this is then sent to the client within 10 minutes of prompting the document or the property. So what are some of the main things that I learned in this process? Number one, use ChatGPT or not. So at first I used OpenAI to generate the entire message for the property agent. This is a module that I used over here. It worked for a while, but there were too many variances. So I ended up taking it out and rather formalizing the email and just adding in the variables of the client's name, because of the fact that this is an initial mail and that we need specific instructions to be followed, and it basically looks the same to everybody who makes a query. We found that there wasn't really a need to use ChatGPT for that, because the email format doesn't need to be that much different, and you won't gain a lot from changing the wording. You actually want the wording to be very similar as you would usually write it. And we also sometimes found a problem where it would end off the email with the agent's name, for example. Sometimes it did that, sometimes it didn't, or sometimes it changed the bullets and things like that. So I put the temperature on 0.7 and still it did that. So I figured I'm not going to bother with that anymore and just make it as simple as possible, a JSON in the email module. So just from after doing this, my experience would be, or my recommendation would be, at first the safest bet is to use the OpenAI module for internal messaging or notifications. So if I were to send an email to my client, to the property agent, it would be a better use case, because there would be an understanding of the variations that can arise from ChatGPT. But to send it to a client leaves you open for risk, because it is not 100% accurate. And so you need to write your prompt exactly right and test it a couple of times to get it to work. So that's just something to keep in mind. Something else I learned in this process was how to add a signature to an email. We ended up not using the signature in the end. The client had some issues with their own signature formatting, which was the reason we ended up not using it. But it took me quite a while to figure out how to add an image inline in the email. So if you want a full demo of that, just write it in the comments and I'll create a demo of how I did that. But basically, in a nutshell, you have to save the JPEG in an external drive, so something like a Google Drive. Save your JPEG in there and then change the permissions of that JPEG in Google Drive to be public so that it can be accessed by external systems. Then you copy the URL of that JPEG and you pull that into make.com, so into the email HTML format. So this only works with HTML, not with plain text. So if you have an HTML format in your email, then you can have HTML code there to source an image and paste that in there as well. So it took me quite a while to figure that out. I'm glad I did. But if you want to see a full demo, as I said, just write it in the comments below. Then other things that I learned was copying the property banner. So if we look at the screen, how I did that. So the client specifically wanted this banner to be reused. So that is HTML code. So what I did is I looked for the text that's in front of this and the text that's after this. And I created a regex to, here we go. I created a regex to extract whatever is between address and this please refer to. And it looked at the HTML content. So the HTML content, it actually gets from the email itself. So because that is how it's being sent. That's why it looks like it does. So that was pretty nice to be able to extract it and just reuse that immediately in my email address or in the email that I sent out. So that was quite nice. The other thing that I did was a WhatsApp link. So this I also actually extracted from the original email. So if you look on the original email, you'll see there is a WhatsApp link in there. It's a bit difficult to see with the grayed out, but there's a WhatsApp link in there. So once again, I actually took that and used the same code to create a WhatsApp link on my own. So if you look in the email, the way that it looks like, this is actually quite useful going forward. Here we go. This section shows the WhatsApp link. So okay, there's the image source that we have. Here's the, so this is kind of how you would reference the signature as well. So there's an image, so it's the WhatsApp logo. Now I'm actually pulling this WhatsApp logo from Property24's website. So you can save it somewhere else and use it on your own. I would actually recommend doing that. It just makes it a bit easier, and just the text of that image, and here's the reference that it uses. There's the text of the reference, WhatsApp, and then here https wa.me, and you add your number in there. And then that link, if you just copy that, this grayed out bit here is the number, then that'll create a WhatsApp link, which is pretty useful. If you click on that link, then it'll open WhatsApp for you, and going forward, that's quite useful. Then other things, as I mentioned, was the parsing of the number. So that is, I extract the price, but as a text. It extracts as a text file, and then I create a variable where I pass the number. So I input that number in there, and passing it means it converts it into a number. So that was quite useful, because then I can actually use numerical variables or filters going forward. So then you actually have a number that you work with and not just a string. So that was quite useful. And then I had an issue with the names, because sometimes people enter the form using their full names, their name and surnames. Sometimes they use capital letters only, sometimes they use lowercase letters only. So that's why I have the inquiry by, which gets the user name from the email. But then I have this ChatGPT section. I'll show the ChatGPT now. Just have a look here. Yes, so it gets the inquiry by, the name, and then in here it says you're a name analyzer. You can identify a name and a surname, and then look at the provided text and extract only the first name that it references to, not the surname, nothing else. Okay, great. And then here's an example. I put my own name for this, and then the user, it gives that name. So that was quite nice. A step that I did before this, maybe I still have it in here. Doesn't look like it though. But I actually added a formatting when I didn't use this yet under variables. Maybe it's still there. Here we go. Yes, client name, start case. So start case changes the text formatting to be a capital letter first and then lowercase letters. So it just standardize the word. So there we go. Then lastly was the watch emails trigger is a scheduling trigger like that. And when you have the free version of Make, it will schedule it at a on a time limit of the lowest time limit is 15 minutes, every 15 minutes. So you can't make it every 1 minute or every 10 minutes or something. So I'll make it every 15 minutes. If that is a bit of an issue. So if you subscribe to Make and you pay a monthly basis, then you can access a shorter time span, so between 1 minute and whatever, which is quite useful. So that's the one thing. There is a workaround that I want to show you now. But the other thing I just want to mention is that every time this operation runs, it takes one operation. So it takes one token. So the more often you run it, if you run it every 15 minutes, it means it'll take 4 tokens an hour. That is even if it doesn't process it. If you do process all of this, then it takes 1 token per module all the way through. So here we have, I think we've got 11 modules here, yes, 11 modules that it uses. So it'll use in total 12 if it processes the whole thing. But it only triggers if there are any new emails that came in. So just to figure out your cost based on that. That's partly why I took some of these modules out here at the bottom, is to make the cost less, because we don't use it. So essentially what I did is I also extracted the web reference, the contact number, the property URL, and the message, but we didn't end up using that. But lastly, if you don't want to schedule it to run on a scheduled basis, so I have it every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes or whatever, then what you can do is you can integrate a webhook. I can also do a full demo of that. But with a webhook, you're essentially creating a custom mailbox using make.com. But there's a bit of a workaround required for that, because this can be an instant trigger. So if I move this across, that's an instant trigger. You see that little lightning bolt. And basically what that means is if an email is received at this webhook, then it'll trigger. And that's, I think, even a better solution. I'll propose that to the client later. But basically you set this up and then you get an email box like that. And what you can do then is any email that's received in that box triggers the process. So what I would do, to enhance this scenario, is I would actually have to go to the client's mailbox and set an auto forward operation in his mailbox, so that whenever he receives a mail from this specific source, it gets forwarded to this mail hook and it takes the processing from there. So that is one way, because then it triggers immediately, which can save you tokens in the long run. So that's something that we can still improve on this system. So that's the way we work. If I just want to auto align this again, this is what we have now in the end, and it's been running pretty smoothly now for the past couple of days. The client seems to be happy. If there's anything that stands out from you that you'd like to know more about, then just pop it in the comments below. I will make a demo on that. If there are any things here that I could have done better, could enhance, please tell me. I'd love to know. I'm also still learning a lot about Make, and any new knowledge would be very useful. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.